a little bit. Yes, and so yes. So I mean, the topic of the day. So everyone, thank you so much for being here. Still, as of now. Uh, so I'll possibly try and keep it to 30 minutes as much as possible. There are a lot of examples because this is something which this is a very personal and a very something which I did myself and not really learned from someone or thought about how to do this. But as I think what happens is, so I mean, before we begin Guru Purnima, first of all, thanks to all my gurus. I started learning with Mark Boniji. First of all, I started, and my first astrology lesson was in Gemini. So Gemini is very dear to my heart. I keep continuing to explore, possibly the most complex because the level of Sanskrit itself that you need to know to decipher Gemini Sutras is very high. But all said and done, he learned from Sri K. N. Rao. I was fortunate that I learned Gemini with him. Then I went and learned with Penny Farrow. Penny Farrow comes from Mantriji and Hard Defo background. Akhila Kumarji I learned with now. Again on Gemini because she spent a lot of time. She spent most of her 40 years on researching Gemini. She's the author of Sthira Dasha, which she's done a tremendous amount of research. And I think in about a year's time, there should be another book coming out on Gemini astrology. Paul Manley is someone I apprentice with because he doesn't teach, he's a fully practicing astrologer. So 40 years of practicing astrology and to kind of, understand how he looks at charts or how a practicing astrologer looks at charts is very different from, attending a course or learning astrology from a teacher. So having learned astrology, then you want to be with someone who's been practicing, who has the practical understanding of looking at a chart. My focus has been on three areas, essentially Parashara systems, which is the typical whatever is there in Brihad Parashara, Ahura Shastra, and the other Shastras. Gemini is very different. That's the second area of focus. And the third area of focus for me has been Tajika Prashna. So I am not really a follower of, Prashna Marga or the other systems. I have studied original Tajika texts with, written by Ibn Sal and people like Mashallah, who give out these techniques for Tajika Prashna. Is it as advanced as what Mr. Jain Sharma used to do? No, not really. But I think to get there, one needs to get a very fundamental understanding of Tajika concepts because Prashna originally is a Tajika concept. It's not so much Vedic. And then there is a blending with Neelkanthi. When Neelkantha wrote his book, I think that's where the blending happened of Indian astrology systems and Tajika systems. And then forward from there, it evolved a lot. The topic that I have for today is, oh my God, sorry. Yeah. Started off because when I started studying astrology, the first thing we learn is, and the first thing we all jump up to look at is my chart. What is my life? What is going on? And these are early days of learning astrology. So this is way back. And I started looking at the condition of planets in my chart. This is my chart. And I saw, that, okay, there is a great Raj Yoga between Mercury and Sun, but there is Saturn in the fourth house. Oh, I will never have a property. And that's typically the journey we go through. And then gradually we learn to blend a lot, many more factors. But what intrigued me is because I was learning astrology in 2018 when my Venus Mahadasha had started. And I was a young student at that time. I was looking at avasthas and I was looking at, oh my God, this is a Mrit Avastha planet. This is debilitated. It is 0 degrees. It is deep Sandhi. I was looking at a Bhava Chalita chart and saying, is it in the 9th or is it in the 10th? What will happen in my Venus Dasha? So this Neecha planet was always a topic on my mind. And it's, obviously it's personal because we all want to know what my life is going to be. So at some point in time, I started researching the idea of saying, what is Neecha and what is Neecha Bhanga? And this is not then, but this is now. So in the last about, let's say, 1 year, where I have been doing a lot of research, I have a lot of time. Venus debilitated, yeah, gives you a lot of time. Maybe, maybe not. So I started researching and looking at charts of as many number of charts I could see where somebody has run a debilitated planet's dasha, and so wanting to understand it. And obviously, what we come across is, stuff like Sushupta. It is, a debilitated planet in some texts is defined as Sushupta, which means it's sleeping, right? Or it is Kala, or it is a maker of trouble, or it is Ati Bhita Avastha, or it's very scared, so in the sense, essentially saying that it is not in a position to do anything much. Now, if that was the description, then I said data has to support whatever we do. So I'm fundamentally, my background is pretty much some science, some management background. I worked for corporates all my life. Data has been the source of deciding everything. So I believe in the fact that, like Sunilji also says, there is a dictum, and he posts on Facebook, send me charts. Don't send me results, send me charts so that you can collect X number of charts and actually see what happened or what didn't happen. And data, I think, should decide at the end of the day. So I started off that. Then, of course, I read K.N. Rao Saab's kitabs, books, where it says, that a Neecha planet will operate first Neecha, then a Neecha Bhanga position will happen, and then Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga. Now, this is even more intriguing, right? To say what are these three different states of a Neecha planet. And so I started looking at saying, is every Neecha Bhanga a Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga? Necessarily or not? And the only way was to look at, understand what the Shastra says about it. The ultimate authority being that there are hints in Shastra, there is something or the other which is coming up. So my most of my study so far has been around the Shastras, given here. I wish to, of course, expand it in coming times to many more. But to start with, this itself is so much that, there is enough to digest here. Even in the last talk, if I think you attended any of, the last lecture I gave, and I said, I have a belief that, Brihat Parashara, Hora Shastra, and then sequentially a lot of texts have been written. They are possibly people taking some, the whole idea of what the Hora Shastra, what Parashara ji says, and then applying it in their practice of astrology, their observational stuff, and then coding it into a book that they wrote. So whether it is Kalidasa or whether it is, Manteshwara ji, or whether it is Satyachara, etc., they've all, or even, Vaharamira, who's possibly the most recent in terms of that, I think, are evolving practices and experiences of Jyotish. So I always find Jyotish as a living science. It's not like Newton's law, right? I mean, that's it. It's quoted and end of story. But as Newton's law was applied, new ideas were discovered, and that's how I think every body of knowledge or the human progression happens. However, what I found interesting was that Brihad Parashara Hora Shastra makes a reference to debilitation and the idea related to debilitation and Raj Yoga. Phaldipika, of course, I think is the only book which defines it in so much of clarity and with so much of detail. The other one is, at some points in time, Uttara Kalmitra makes a reference, just 2 shlokas devoted to it, but it's more of a repetition of what Phaldipika has already quoted. But nowhere else do we find any kind of enumeration about what really is a Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga. So Neecha Bhanga has been defined. Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga, and let's quickly get into that. The first point of reference I will take you to is Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, chapter 41. I studied the Girishchand Sharma ji's edition. Shloka 19 and 20 in chapter 41 make a reference. And the reference is of a Raj Yoga, but there are 2 distinct shlokas and they have different conditions. So it says if the 6th, 8th, or 3rd bhava, so he uses these three bhavas, and not the 12th, occupied by a debilitated planet, right? And the condition being that the Lagna Lord is in own sign or exaltation sign, and or aspects the Lagna. So making the Lagna very strong, essentially. Then he says a Raj Yoga is formed, and the results he describes are pretty much a Raj Yoga result. The other one is he uses 6, 8, and 12, but says that if their lords are debilitated, right, in an enemy sign or combust, and the Lagna Lord being strong in its own sign exaltation, aspecting the Lagna. So there is, of course, a whole lot of meaning which you can, really go into the depth and try and understand. But this is the only reference Brihadarasha Hora Shastra kind of makes in the context of a Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga, right? But he still does not talk about Neecha Bhanga as such. Now, I may be short on what I have said, and if someone has a reference, I would love to have it. In the Brihadarasha Hora Shastra, where a Neecha Bhanga condition or what causes Neecha Bhanga is given out in some detail. Of course, as we go to a chart, let's look at the demonstration of the chart. So we know that he says, if there is a debilitated planet in 6, 8, or 3rd, and I was doing my own research and I found the chart of Demi Moore. A whole lot of people, some of us may know, some of us may not. A superstar, a mega superstar of Hollywood, started very early, and she runs the Mars Dasha at a point in time, which is, now she's born in 62, she's running in 81. So she's just about 20, 21, 22 or something. The Lagna is borderline, yes. But if you do a birth time rectification using events across Vargas, the birth time holds good. Jan 81 to Jan 88, right? It is a Neecha Bhanga planet. It is in Parivartana with Moon. So the 6th Lord and the 3rd Lord are in Moon. We'd expect a sportsman, but this is not a sportsman. And it's exalted in the D9. So there is a condition to D9, which is good. And Lagna Lord Saturn is Swarashi. Now, it does not aspect the Lagna, but the results that I read about and I researched about her life is that as soon as Mars Dasha started, the career rise for her started. It is the 10th Lord making that Raj Yoga, as Parashara said it, and it's completely applicable to what has been the experience of her life. So that is just quickly to say that whatever Parashara said is absolutely applicable in a whole lot of charts. You can see it, and it plays out exactly as a Raj Yoga result, despite being in the 7th, despite being everything else. Going on, Phaldipika dedicates 5 shlokas to how a Neecha Bhanga happens. So he uses the Lord of the sign, and I'm sure all of us are aware of this. This is something very fundamental to astrology. Or I would invite you to simply look at chapter 7, Adhyaya 7, called Maharaj Yoga. It's a chapter after chapter 6, which is Raj Yoga Adhyaya. Then he has a second chapter called Maharaj Yoga chapter. Shloka 26 to 30 describe, this is from the SS Sareen. There's the GS Kapoor edition, which may be a little plus minus in terms of exact page numbers or shloka numbers. He spends 5 shlokas. Now, Manteshwaraji is spending 5 shlokas in a book which possibly has only so many shlokas, right? Now, so that itself is an indication that he's giving a huge amount of importance to this particular factor, which either he found in his practice or he, observed as he saw, as he was practicing his sense of his astrology. And so this has become the foundation of all of us today understanding what a Neecha Bhanga condition is. Now, there is, like I said, in Jataka Parijat, there is one reference. There are 2 shlokas only. I think I said Uttara Kalmitra earlier, so please, ignore that. Jataka Parijat gives a reference. But if you read what he is talking about, he's talking about essentially what Banteshwara ji has already defined. So he's talking about the same condition that when, the debilitation, when the Lord of the sign where the debilitated planet is, or the exaltation, or the Lord of the exaltation sign of that planet, if they are in a Kendra to the moon or the Lagna, then the person, and so he's defining that, okay, Neecha Bhanga happens. He kind of agrees with that, apparently. So over a period of time, after Manteshwaraji, Neecha Bhanga seems to have taken roots and got established as a valid concept. Let us then say, okay, if in essence, what really Manteshwaraji is saying, and that's a Neecha Bhanga, or what Jataka Parijat says, is a Neecha Bhanga, then we should see results and evidence related to whatever is going on. So I looked up charts and I found the chart of the gentleman called Charles Bronson. Charles Bronson was a famous actor in his own time. The famous Magnificent Seven, if some of us remember from my generation, he was one of the key lead roles in that. He has a planet, Venus, which is debilitated. And I was very excited to see this chart because I am Saji Lagna. He is Sagittarius Lagna. His Venus is debilitated. My Venus is debilitated. And he's run the dasha of that debilitated Venus. So I started researching the internet to figure out what all happened in his life. And if you can read on the right-hand side column, the results are not very great, right? His father dies very early. He's running the Venus Dasha from February 27 to 47. He's born in 21, which means that about 5 years to 25, he's running that Dasha. These are years of formation of life. These are years of formation of psychology. This is years of, when you get into school, college, and you possibly start work or maybe a little after that. His father died and he and his brother had to go and work in a coal mine. They were paid $1 for some 10 kilos of coal that they mined. And they were in extreme poverty, so much so that even to school sometimes he would wear his sister's clothes because there were no clothes at home. And there is enough to read there to say how they lived on soup because there was no food at home. Terrible dasha. Now, then the idea was to say, is there a Neecha Bhanga actually happening here? So interestingly, Venus and Mercury are involved in a parivartana. Venus's exaltation lord is Jupiter. Venus exalts in Pisces, Jupiter. Jupiter is with Venus. It is in the Kendra from the Lagna and from the moon. And it is the Lagna lord. Despite all of this, all Neecha Bhanga conditions, as Shri Manteshwaraji said, are met. But yet, this is definitely not a Raj Yoga Dasha. This is a terrible Dasha for him. It is only after Venus and much later, by the time he comes into Mars, that he makes it, he gets a break and he makes it big. So this was a depressing chart because this is like very much my Venus. And I said, no, there has to be something more, because hope is the only thing you live on. Then I looked at another chart, which came to me, and I've not revealed the name here, but of course, I think by the time we finish this, you will be able to research it on Google. The gentleman was the president of a company called Theranos. It had a revenue, he took over as the president, it had a revenue of 55 million US dollars. He went on to raise $700 million from investors, etc., etc. The chart came from a fellow astrologer student to whom it got passed on by someone. And he has been live on a session with this gentleman, so the birth data is pretty perfect. Moon is the debilitated planet. Mars is the sign where Moon is debilitated. Mars is aspecting Ketu. Mars is in a Kendra from the Moon and from the Lagna. Complete Neecha Bhanga, right? So there should be some Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga. But the challenge is he starts Moon Dasha in December 2015 to 25. And as 2015 starts, and by the year 22 comes, which is within the Moon Dasha and is still on, Moon Dasha is still not over, he gets imprisoned for 22 years, 15 years, 15 years prison sentence, because the investigations revealed there was a whole lot of problems and challenges and things that they had done within the company. The company is Theranos. If you go to internet, you'll possibly be able to read and validate what happened in this guy's case. Two charts, all conditions met, whether it is Jatak Parijata or Phaldipika, but terrible dashas. No Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga. So the question in my mind was, is there anything called Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga? So the idea was to study more charts and say, Does it really happen? Do people get great results? And of course, the best example which comes to my mind is Barack Obama. He made president in Jupiter Dasha. Jupiter Dasha gave him a complete rise in life. He started Jupiter at a very early age, became president in Jupiter Moon, right? So then I said, hang on, this is a complete contrast. What is about this Jupiter which is so different from any of the other planets that we've seen so far, whether it was Charles Bronson or the gentleman from Theranos? So if you observe and carefully look at it, Jupiter is Digbala. Jupiter is retrograde. Now, Manteshwara and a whole lot of classics. And the fact that Cheshtubala gives 60 rupas to a planet which is retrograde in Shadbala calculation is evidence enough to say that a retrograde planet has a source of strength. It is strong. Now, how it manifests, what it does, I'm not getting into that, right? Whether it's past life or not, I don't know. But I'm just simply looking at here is a person who runs this dasha, a debilitated Jupiter, Neecha Bhanga by Saturn itself. Jupiter is retrograde, it is Digbala. And if some of us are familiar, it forms a lovely Gauri Yoga. The Gauri Yoga is formed when Moon is exalted or Swarashi in a Kendra Trikona, especially Trikona, and aspected by Jupiter. And Jupiter Moon is the dasha which made him president of the United States. And of course, Saturn gave him the second term. In D9, Jupiter is in Pisces, which means it goes to its own sign. Another lovely thing which applies here is what Laghu Parashari says, that the 12th Lord is a neutral Lord. And so, while it does whatever else we spoke just now, it does, it also passes on the results of the Shasha Yoga. So, great results, completely contrasting. I was hopeful that, okay, something is emerging. So I went on to study, and I'll share a couple of charts with you. Here's a Meryl Streep. Now, the reason why I think, I'll end up sharing a lot of charts which are from the US or whatever is not because I have a preference for that, but I always establish the credibility of the birth time before I start examining a chart. Now, all charts I'm sharing with you are not just AA rated on Astro Data Bank, but in the source notes at the bottom of the page, if you go to Astro Data Bank, it says source of birth time. So when the birth certificate is in hand, is the only time I feel comfortable and confident to do some detailed analysis on a chart. Now she has a Jupiter debilitated. Now it's not Digbali, but it is in a Kendra. It is the 9th Lord as well, by the way, and makes a very good Kesari Yoga. Now, Kesari Yoga between Manteshwaraji and Paldipika, there are two different, there are slight variations. So when Jupiter is in a Kendra from the Lagna, itself is a Kesari Yoga. And when it is Kendra from the Moon is also a Kesari Yoga. So there's a double Kesari Yoga effect that Jupiter carries with it. It is the 9th Lord of Bhagya. And so what happens to her is that during the Jupiter Dasha, she gets as many as 8 Academy Awards or Oscar Award nominations and wins for Best Actress as well. Definitely a Raj Yoga in the context of the profession she follows. So I said, interesting. There's something seems to be emerging between charts where there are poor experiences and there are great experiences. Let's look at another one. Stephen King, a great author, right? Who in his Moon and Mars major periods, he reigns supreme among authors of popular fiction in the US. But Mars, of course, also found him dealing with severe injuries. And I think that's pretty obvious. 2 malefics in the Lagna Lord debilitated. Yes, these dashas will show up in giving what they have to give negative. But we see a parivartana between Mars and Moon. So the lords of the 1st and the 5th, and Parashara and everyone talks about a 1-5 parivartana as being a Dhani Yoga and a Raj Yoga. Because these are 2 Lakshmi sthanas. Lakshmi sthanas, typically we say 5 and 9, but the Lagna is also a trine. It's not just a Kendra. And which is why it's the most auspicious house of a chart. So There is that. Then there is the Jupiter-Moon Kesari combination happening there. This Jupiter is the ninth lord combining with the Lagna lord, making another Raj Yoga. Jupiter aspecting back onto, sitting in the fifth, aspecting the Lagna in the ninth, which is a very, very strong Dharma combination, which comes into play, fifth and first lord in a Parivartana. So those of us who attended some time back the Penny Pharaoh presentation will see there is a lot of Dharma in this chart. And obviously, because of the Parivartana, because of the way the chart, the strength which comes to the debilitated planet, by the fact that while it is debilitated, there is another source of strength parallelly available for it. And it is making Raj Yogas. Moon is the Lagna Lord, Mars is the 10th Lord. So it also makes a Karma Dharma Adhipati Yoga of a Lagna Lord and 10th Lord combination. So this is a very auspicious combination. Everything else is great. The Parivartana makes it absolutely amazing. He was absolutely the top-selling author at that point in time. So again, there is something emerging. So that means there are some more conditions than just what Manteshwaraji said about, if it's a Neecha Bhanga, there'll be a Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga. It doesn't seem to be that. There seems to be a little more than that when it operates like a Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga. And of course, in India, we cannot, go to sleep without talking Amitabh Bachchan's chart. Venus Dasha, 8th house. Look at so this is an intriguing chart always. And I've seen so many people talk about this and so many people, explain whatever is going on. But I believe that, if you do enough reading, and research is about reading people's lives, applying whatever you see to the chart and say, how and why is it giving the kind of results it's giving? As you do that to a number of charts, if you do that to, let's say, 500, 600 charts, you then get a sense of saying, okay, next time I look at a chart of anyone who walks up and I see certain conditions, I know what this dasha will possibly look like. Venus is debilitated, of course, as a Neecha Bhanga. Venus is interestingly in Taurus in D9. I have not been able to show it here, but you can always go back and look at it. The time for Amitabh Bachchan is not very sure, but so I have relied on, what Sri K.N. Rao has written in his books about Amitabh Bachchan using his chart and using that time. So this is exactly that time which Sri K.N. Rao uses. It's in the Taurus Lagna in D9. It is, in Taurus in D9. It is the ninth lord of the D1. It is involved in a 9-10 Raj Yoga, the ultimate Raj Yoga that Parasharaji or Laghu Parashari says for any chart possible. There is a 5-9 Raj Yoga, Trikona Raj Yoga between Mercury and Venus. So this Venus is making a lot of Raj Yogas. It is Neecha Bhang. It is Swarashi in D9, which is a clear source of strength. Everyone tells us that we must look at D9 as the final condition of the planet. And in Libra in D10. So in the D10 also, it is very well fortified. And this dasha is possibly coming after Mercury when he went bankrupt in the early part of Mercury and then started his revival. Just look at the underlined items in the narrative for his Venus dasha, what I found. Till 2024, when he has played this role of Ashwathama in Kalki. He is not looked back in the Venus dasha, except for one small illness during the COVID period. It's been a phenomenal dasha. So again, something is there which possibly, so it's not just Neecha Bhanga, it is in the 8th house. We look at the 8th house, so many planets, and we get scared and saying, oh my God, this guy's life is finished. But here is a life which has been absolutely shining and outstanding, despite 4 planets in the 8th house. And the Venus dasha being phenomenal. He still lives it. He's possibly going to live it a few more years and then get into a Sun dasha. That may be a different story. So in a sense, what I found, and I have done this for about at least, I have 25 charts, both where the dasha has been bad or dasha has been great, all validated, all data available on Wikipedia. Anyone can verify. What I found is, the Neecha Graha must have a Neecha Bhanga. And it's very interesting, by the way. If you apply all the rules of Neecha Bhanga, you'll hardly find a planet which cannot be Neecha Bhanga. Neecha Graha lord, now this is an important point I found in my research, that they should lord either a neutral house or a Kendra or a Trikona bhava. Why? Because fundamentally they should be capable of making a Raj Yoga in the chart. Now, if you have a sixth lord like I have, which is the sixth lord and the 11th lord, they are Upchaya lords, all that is fine, but they by the fact that they own these bhavas, they are not in a capacity to make Raj Yogas. Neecha Graha must have an additional source of strength, like either being retrograde or Digbala in the D1 chart. Participates in Raj Yogas or Graha Yogas, like we saw the Gauri Yoga of Barack Obama, or a Kesari Yoga or a Gaj Kesari Yoga. The Neecha Graha must be placed in own sign or exaltation sign in D9. So while it is debilitated here, it may get Neecha Bhanga, but the D9 position becomes very important. Neecha Graha can have a Parivartana in D1 or in the Navamsha. That again is a very solid source of strength. A Parivartana makes a planet, does give it a source of strength. Now, of course, it can be Vargottama. And if it's dispositor, the Vargottama planets, the planet which is Vargottama, so there could be a planet which is, let's say, debilitated in D1 and in D9, right? So it's Vargottama. But then do look for if the dispositor of this planet, either in D1 or D9, has a condition which is giving it some source of strength, which could be Digbala, which could be retrograde, which could be any of these. The Neecha Graha making a Parashari exception, right? So it's placed in the 368, and the Lagna Lord is strong or aspecting the Lagna. It's great. Last but not the least, which I have not clearly demonstrated here, but I found very valid in my research, is that in the Dasha Varga Bala, so there is, while we have these various combinations of divisional charts, there is something known as the Dasha Varga Bala. So the 10 divisional chart, Dasha is 10 and Varga is divisionals. So 10 divisional charts as defined by the rishis. If a planet attains dignity in as many of them, and this is very much explained in Paldipika again, as various statuses. So they start with something smaller, and then they go on to Gopuramsha, Parvatamsha, Indramsha, etc. So the more the planet is strong in a chart, while D1 it appears to be debilitated, and if it is the lord of the right kind of houses, a Kendra, Trikona, or a neutral bhava, which is the second and the 12th, and participating in Raj Yogas, because as the neutral lord, second on the 12th, they will pass on the results of the planets they are with. So the 12th lord is with a 9-10 combination in a chart, you may still get great results in that dasha because it's a neutral lord. And Laghu Parashari says they will pass on the results of the other planets there. They call it the Sahachar Bhava. So I think, integrating a lot of material and putting a lot of stuff into practice has allowed me to kind of come at this point to say, there are certain conditions only under which a Neecha Graha will behave like a Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga planet. Or else, what Sri K. N. Rao said is absolutely right. A Neecha Graha will first give Neecha results, which means the bhavas that it owns the results will not manifest in strength. So now, if it owns a Trig bhava, it is good actually. So my Venus is the 6th lord and the 11th lord. 11th lord Neecha is not a good idea, but 6th lord Neecha is not bad. It doesn't have the strength to bring out 6th house results. And Parasharaji says that, Trik lords, debilitated, Lagna lord being strong is a good idea. And then it'll appear as a Neecha Bhanga planet, which means it'll get more comfortable and give better results. And ultimately, it may give Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga results if it satisfies the conditions. So, in a sense, every Neecha Bhanga is not a Neecha Bhanga Raj Yoga. With that, I will come to the end of a short presentation, and I hope it made sense. I will now exit. I'll stop share and be open to any comments, any suggestions, any ideas that anyone has.
Great lecture, sir.
Thanks so much. Please keep on admitting people. I think Sandeep ji has done an excellent presentation, and he
Yeah,
has given
I hope it was people were
food
able to
for.
understand and grasp because I just went in one shot, keeping the time in mind because it's late for everyone. It's a Friday night, and there are other presentations to be made. But if you do have any questions, please feel free to ask or clarify or share your thoughts.
Hari Krishnan says, excellent presentation. Many thanks, sir. Tarun Kumar, excellent presentation. Kaushik Majumdar, very well presented. Sandeep ji, thank you. Suresh Babu says, excellent and super and beautiful class, sir. Archita Anil Navgekar says, thanks a lot. Prakash Kamath says, excellent presentation and well put succinctly. Tejinder Kumar says, thanks, Tyagi ji. And Hema Bhatt says, great, thank you. Ravi Raj, excellent, sir. Kiran Shetty. Sandeep ji, thank you for the detailed information. Damini Jairam says, thank you, sir. All right. Thank you, everybody, for encouraging Sandeep ji. Sandeep ji, thank you so much. Okay.
Thanks to you, Sandeep, because I think the fact that you offer such a platform, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who, like me, will get encouraged to do some research, come back to you and say, maybe aap mera presentation dekhiye. I would also like to next Guru Purnima be here.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think this is such a wonderful platform that for all people,
That's
like us who are very junior astrologers. I'm not.
you've done good hard work in a systematic manner. I'm really, really happy to have you and an honor, honestly. मैं दिल से बोल रहा हूँ मैं. Of course, I'm a bit jealous because my wife said, "करके you are very majestic in your presentation." तो मेरा बोला क्या मेरा आवाज आजकल खराब हो गया क्या? My voice is.
Oh my God, so sweet of you, so sweet of her. Thank you so much.
Said it in the last lecture you presented.
Yeah.
Abhi, she said it. And in fact, I was trying your number. I was not getting to many more
Oh,
feedback.
finally, actually now. I have saved it. I'll send you a WhatsApp.
Okay, great. One question has come.
Yes.
Dr. Vishnu Priya, it's a very specific question. This is like a chart consultation. You can always visit his website, grahavidya.com, and whether he wants to answer your question directly and all that, or whatever.
Yeah, because I do understand a lot of us have debilitated grahas. We may possibly be going through a dasha, or we may have someone we love who has a debilitated graha, and we may all be very worried because sometimes these conditions that are given, the avasthas that are given, can be very scary. But the lesson I have learned is, was life never stops. A planet is in your chart, right? It may be a little stronger or it may be a little weaker, but it does not mean that it is not there. So if it is there, life will go on. Yeah, there'll be, I mean, sometimes you run on, you drive your car at 120 kilometers, sometimes you drive at 20, 50 kilometers, and sometimes you're stuck in a traffic jam. That's it. But you're in your car is buzzing, life is fine.
Right. And we have many more thanks coming in. One, uh, one second. Dr. Veena Sharma says, excellent. I saw her message, now I don't see it. Thanks a lot for a very, Dr. Veena Sharma says, dear Sandeep sir, thanks a lot for a very detailed lecture on a crucial subject. I enjoyed a lot. And Ruchi says, excellent lecture, very clear and insights shared with great apt examples and with great humility, a topic on which students face a lot of confusions. Thanks for enlightening us with the difference. Pragya is saying, can we get recordings of this? I'll be making this particular video on YouTube, so you can have it. Okay. And Anand Prakash is saying, what a voice and command. Remembered Amitabh's voice. See, you're
I
getting.
I think Sunil bhai, you had said it right in the beginning, huh?
So KBC, I remember. Ananda, you need to stop your disappearing act. Please contact Nitesh. He was waiting for your message. Anyway, thanks so much. And I will stop the recording. Okay.